Well, welcome back to the Bone and Becoming Undone. Today we have a crossover episode with Toby Brooks and Shelby Daly. Today we're going to go over some leadership things. I don't even know how, this is just a riff episode, we decided.
Yeah.
So, I've come across a few situations where I've bounced it off Toby with all of his knowledge and the work that he's doing. And I thought that, my situation, there's a lot of people in sports medicine that are dealing with it, and you think you're the problem. So I don't know, Toby. We can start with my situation. You can give a little roll into how I reached out to you and what you've been providing. I don't know.
Yeah. Shelby, I thank you for reaching out. I think this is timely and it's important. I know it is something that's near and dear to your heart and has been at the forefront of your experience. I have also similarly been applauded and discouraged at the same time, depending on who, for being vocal about the profession of athletic training and about how we need to do better. And so I find it interesting that there are loud voices on both sides of this argument. And it's not who I would have expected. Like the people that have pushed back against the things I've said are not just old folks that, did this 30 or 40 years ago. So I think this is a timely conversation. I think it's, I appreciate and I really do respect the platform that you've built. And I'm honored to be here today.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you've been a great mentor with all of your years of experience and even your podcast. I mean, I still don't think a lot of athletic trainers know what you're doing, and I wanted to definitely loop them in on the projects that you have going on and how you're coaching and helping people out. But, since you've kindly helped me out and been a sounding board, uh, I want to try to get more people in your space and so that they can figure out and be better athletic trainers or just people in general.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about this when you reached out. It feels like we're both kind of peeking in opposite sides of this problem from our own windows. And you've built a platform that's almost exclusively ATs, but definitely sports medicine adjacent folks, and have really spoken into this issue very specifically.
Mhm.
And I've kind of gone the other way. When I first started, I didn't even really mention that I was an athletic trainer. These were just kind of issues that I saw in the broader kind of corporate and athletics and art areas where we get a few years into a career and we wonder what now? Like this isn't, I'm here and I don't feel better for it.
Yeah.
And so I have tried to kind of loop ATs into this conversation. So I've been broad and trying to kind of niche down. You've been niche. And I think your message and the things that you're touching on do extend far beyond athletic training.
Yeah. Well, and it's trying to associate the situation with common things, How can we get people to relate and actually see, oh, this does interact with my life and how I'm making decisions in my profession. I love LinkedIn, but there's a lot of broad stroke stuff. And I obviously just finished my DAT in leadership, entrepreneurship, and globalization. But it was all the positive things when things are going well, and nobody actually coaches or teaches you, well, what happens when it's not going well?
Yeah.
How do you actually have a case study of this person's non-compliant, they're not doing what you're doing, there's pushback on how you're presenting ideas. I know I had approached you with the situations I keep encountering is I feel like I'm meeting people halfway, but I don't think people are meeting me halfway. And
Mhm.
I guess I'm always kind of in that extrovert category of all these disc tests and all these other measurables. But, I feel like I have to be selfish sometimes and be like, well, do I always have to meet everybody else and
Yeah.
accommodate their things? And
Uh-huh.
I think that's where it's getting frustrated as I get further into my career and the profession of athletic training is I'm supposed to keep giving, but when do I get to
Yeah.
be given to?
Yeah. I don't know if you're a fan of the Taylor Sheridan cinematic
Oh,
universe,
yes.
but
Yes.
we were watching Dutton Ranch last night, and Rip has taken over as the ranch foreman at a competing ranch. And I looked over at my wife, like, he just comes out and he's just gruff and foul language, and he's just like, "Get on your effing horses and let's get to work." And the leadership side of that, I'm like, how liberating would it be to be able to just tell people to do their job? And even on the receiving end, like, not veiled in corporate speak, not, HR sensitive, like, could we just communicate like human beings and be our authentic self? And how much better
Yes.
would it be? But no, we have to dress it up and make it kind. And it sounds bad. Like as I'm saying this out loud, people that don't know me are going to be like, "What an a-hole this guy is." But I just feel like that authenticity is so missing. And that's what I love about athletics is we still have vestiges of that where you can get on somebody and you can coach them up and you can be kind of an unvarnished, non-sugar coated version of yourself. But
Yeah.
it seems like that's fewer and further in between. And I get it. I mean, there are also instances where that's toxic and that can lead to a really bad work environment. So
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm jealous of Rip and his leadership style.
Well, that's the emotional intelligence is obviously important and finessing how you talk to people and, how they receive, in school these days is you have to figure out different ways to teach something. There's the hands-on, there's reading, there's the verbal, tactical, all those types of things, which I think are very important, but that's what I was kinda saying before is I have to accommodate for how they like to do things every single time it feels like, but nobody it feels like they ask me what I prefer, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that directness of, "Oh, Shelby's easy to read because she's just direct, she likes the information clear," but that's the hard thing in business and athletic training is you have to be direct and make sure things are clear cut, or else that's where confusion, misdirection, you know, uh, y- time sensitive things get screwed up. Is that,
Hmm.
okay, we're gonna accommodate for all these personal things that are going on in someone's life. Either you take the time off and deal with it, or you kinda have to buck up and do it because there is money, there are contracts, there's timelines. In athletics, we should know that the best because we're trying to get someone back and playing as quick as possible. So we understand that from a personnel standpoint, but from a business standpoint, we just seem to kinda miss the boat on those things, and we
Yeah.
don't understand it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think there's an urgency that it's just enculturated in the profession. And to our own detriment, I think practice gets moved and we adjust and we get everything over to field 4 instead of field 1 and we make it work.
Yeah.
And we live in that urgency so often that when we find ourselves in places where that's not normal, it can feel unresponsive, like we're lacking agility, those kinds of things. But I love what you're saying in that why am I always expected to be the person that gives and everyone else takes? When does that come the other direction? When can I be allowed to be my authentic self? When can you meet me on my terms once in a while? And
Mhm.
man, that is a sentiment that resonates with me. I totally get that.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up Dutton Ranch. I think I told you when I texted you is like, if you've seen the F1 movie with Brad Pitt, I identify with Brad Pitt, but I never feel like I have leadership that understands what I'm doing. I'm doing the grunt work, the groundwork to make sure that all the systems are actually working and going to flow later down the line, kind of the big picture, small detailed portions. So I'm all about efficiency, and people think that I don't like talking to people or interacting. I actually do, but there's so much capacity and bandwidth that I can actually give that it's how do I put systems in place where people can be self-sufficient? And that's another thing that athletic trainers I think are starting to understand, but at the same time we are so self-dependent in our identity of working with the athlete one-on-one, you know, while other things are going on and multitasking, but we feel that their success their ability to get back is so dependent on us and our decisions and being able to touch base all the time, having to be at every practice, every game, you know, this identity that we've built up that we always have to be available, I think is where we are stabbing ourselves in the back
Yeah.
and why, the work-life balance, overworking, work-life harmony, whatever you want to call it. I think that's where we're having some strain is that we've built these cultures that aren't self-sustaining. I don't think that most doctors or physical therapists are on call 24/7 and they don't need to be you know, obviously with insurance, they are paying for attention, so it is one-on-one, but I don't I don't think that we've stepped back far enough to show that we can make our athletes or patients capable of dealing with their program, and I can do other stuff or, the practices that the weightlifting sessions. I don't think somebody's really going to injure themselves. You know, I think we're just so anxious and anxiety ridden that we're burnt out that we think there's going to be an injury at any weird time. We're not prepping our staff to be able to deal with it. Staff, as in coaches or strength and conditioning, giving them resources to be self sufficient. So that's kind of where my mind goes. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think if I'm really honest about this, and I've thought a lot about this since you texted me and we've had some of these conversations, early in my career, I think even within my own heart, there were times when I stood on a sideline and wondered, like, what can I really do here? If no one gets seriously injured, what's my role? If I'm just
Mhm.
standing at practice and no one's out and I'm just watching and no one gets hurt, did it matter if I was here? The sales side of things, I want every coach and every athletic director and every school board administrator, all those people, I want them to realize that having sports without an AT present is asking for trouble. But within my
Mhm.
own self, like as long as nothing serious happens, I could get away with not being there. There's just one of me, and if there are 4 athletic events, I can't be in 4 places at one time. I was at a junior college one time where there was even a rank order list of priorities where if there were concurrent events, this was where I was expected to be. And, depending on who was playing or what was going on, then I would consult the list so that they would know where I would be at any given time.
Mhm.
Well, what's that mean for the other 3 concurrent events? Well, as long as nobody gets hurt, we kind of got away with it, right?
Yeah.
But I think where the future really needs to be for us is to get away from coverage mindset and get to performance mindset. Like
Yeah.
if I'm at practice and no one's out, but someone's at 85%, what can I do to get them to 100%? What can I do, in other parts of the day that are ultimately going to help that patient athlete recover faster? And I don't think we've done a good job of documenting or drawing attention to those types of things. I had Dr. Tyler Lesher on my show last week, and he's kind of a new generation that is carving their own area. Like he's a performance coach. He refers to himself as a performance therapist for a single NBA player. And he
Mhm.
can kind of do all the things he maybe wanted to do, but was constrained from doing as the head basketball AT at UCLA. And he can document how he's helping his patient get better and
Yeah.
melding the sports performance side of things and the analytics side of things and the data collection. That's not something we've done a good job of as athletic trainers.
Mhm.
We kind of know in our heart that our job's important and we hope that everybody else notices. Well, that's not a viable way to really make the claim or the case that we're a critical part of your operation.
Yeah. Yeah. And even for the ROI debate and all that stuff is, yeah, we can keep putting numbers from the ICD codes, but we still aren't necessarily quantifying, well, who's the best at the rehab? Who's the best at medical response? Like, me and my mom were talking yesterday, and I had recently posted about how the NATA wasn't necessarily advocating to access to athletic training programs cheaper with the rise legislation for student loans and stuff. and how the ROI on that doesn't make sense because you're just increasing the cap of what a college or university can charge you for a program. You still have to pay that back and interest. So you're making it
Mhm.
more expensive. But we were talking about if anybody looks at my LinkedIn or my resume, I mean, that's the first thing they notice is all the certifications, the certificates, all those different things that I've done to try to set myself apart when I go into an interview. Nobody's ever offered me more money for those,
Mhm.
ever, or even made a note of like, well, we're giving you, this is how we're going to structure your pay, and that you have all these experience, you can do these different manual therapies, we're going to give you a chunk of money just for that. The only thing that I've gotten a raise for is my CSCS. And that's when I was going back to my previous job during COVID when they're rehiring. And I made a stink about it of we don't have a strength and conditioning coach and I'm the only one on staff with this certification. So they gave me like 5 grand. Not that much at the end of the day. But we haven't figured out how to reward athletic trainers for the extra certifications, knowledge, specialties that they're gaining. And that's where I'm worried. We haven't been able to put a price on that.
Yeah.
And we're going down this road with the BOC doing specialty certifications, but they don't have any research or evidence that that's going to definitely get them a pay bump if somebody has that. It
Mhm.
just qualifies you for a position at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I was going with that thought, but
Yeah.
it kind of circles back into this conversation somehow.
No, I think you're right. The move to masters as the entry level, I think, yeah, that's great. We're trying to keep pace with initially chiropractors, but eventually OTs and PTs, and we want to be esteemed as
Mhm.
comparable to those fields. But the job market didn't really support that. It's not like graduates today with master's degrees, 2 more years at minimum, and the incurred cost. If you
Mhm.
were to compare an entry-level salary in 2000 when it was bachelor's required to now with master's required, there's no you're not getting a pay bump because you have a master's degree. It in some cases, we might have even lost ground. Salaries
Mhm.
have gotten a little better, but inflation is insane. And so, 50K today, I don't know how that stacks up to 30K when you got a bachelor's degree, but I know that the modern clinician has more time and more money invested in being eligible for that job.
Yeah.
I'm at Baylor. It's a private school. It's 90K a year to go here,
Mhm.
full sticker price.
Yeah.
And, you have to wonder, like, how many years of labor as an AT will it take you just to pay back the privilege of being able to work as an AT?
Yeah.
The ROI just is not there.
Yeah.
Also, going back to what I spoke about previously about, how we don't necessarily see the value in what we offer. The differentiator for my generation was you put in more hours.
Mhm.
If you and I are comparable as clinicians, then how can I set myself apart and be likely to be next in line for the promotion or for the next best job? Well, I
Yeah.
just work myself to the bone. Da um, that work ethic was kind of my lone differentiator because
Mhm.
I can wrap a bag of ice on an athlete just as well as you can. I can do quad sets just like you can. I
Yeah.
can do some stretching routine, but am I really bringing value? Am I getting athletes back on the field faster? I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, in that case, plug and play. Like if someone leaves, we stick someone else in the role and we're no better or worse for it. If they're willing to work more hours, then we benefited from it. And
Yeah.
so I think we really, to your point about the differentiators and having specialty certifications, being able to dry needle, being able to do various types of advanced clinical skills, that's the key. And we know that, but we haven't done a great job of convincing the
Yeah.
people making the hiring decisions that that's a differentiator.
Well, and I mean, probably professional sports is the only place that really headhunts for athletic trainers. I don't know Division 1. I mean, if you're with a coach, usually they'll take you with them wherever they go, which gives some value, but it's very subjective at the end of the day. And that's even just hiring practices in athletic training in general. It's very much who you know, not necessarily the skills that you're presenting. And I still think that's kind of a weird flag that nobody's really caught on to. I know when I graduated, everybody was kind of scrambling to just get a job to start paying back their loans, where I had set my standards of I need to go out and meet people. I did this while I was in the program too. And I think from what I've heard, Katie's kind of diminished that opportunity to network while you're a student of volunteering and getting out and seeing other things other than your clinical rotation. That's the best way to network and get to know people. And if they're not a approved, um, what is it, clinical preceptor or whatever it
Hmm.
needs to be, they really don't like the students doing that, and
Yeah.
this may not be true or whatever, but this is what I've heard. But I went out and worked a bunch of free events because all the cool events in Southern California were volunteer at that time anyway. So I was doing professional beach volleyball with the AVP. I was doing professional BMX, skateboarding, surfing at the US Open. US Soccer was paying for people to go out and do camps. It wasn't a lot, but that was a great experience to try to get my foot in the door for professional soccer, and that's where I wanted to be. So, people thought I was very flighty, and it was, no, I'm trying to go create a network. And
Hmm.
that network has paid off for me at the end of the day. It's given me a lot of experiences, great contacts. I mean, the show is floated by those contacts that I have made, basically.
Yeah.
So, I just that's one of the things I don't think we've realized in athletic training is no one's really being compensated for their specialties. And
Hmm.
that's where I think, with Tyler Lesher is he's driving that path, which is great. And I think there are some other athletic trainers that are starting to do the private client care, and that's how we're going to start defining athletic training is, I'm more on the strength and conditioning side, but, I have the medical background to back it, or I'm more doing manual therapy, uh, nutrition, performance, whatever it may be. And I think that's where I think the BOC is trying to achieve with the specialty certifications, but at the same time, that's where I have a hard time with our professional organizations. They keep creating
Hmm.
stuff, but they're not getting those background things to support it at the same time.
Yeah. To your point about Katie and accredited programs, when I was program director and then also for a while as a clin ed coordinator, um, my contention was always it's a free country. If a student wants to go out, especially during the summer, they're not bound to be on campus. They don't have classes. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what I did. I interned with the Raiders. I interned with USA Baseball. There were, you sought those things out. The institution didn't have anything to do with that. That was me making a relationship with an AT that I respected at a place that I aspired to be, and you can't stop me. What Katie has attempted to do, and I get it, like there's a legal exposure potentially there. If there's no documented contractual reason why random Toby student can show up at the Las Vegas Raiders practice, there's a liability there.
Yeah.
But the downside of that is, well, now we've got lawyers involved, university counsel. There's an agreement. At my previous institution, I think our contracts were 9 or 10 pages to get the site. And then the
Mhm.
preceptor had to do preceptor training and they had to consent to our documentation procedure. Like to get a student an experience went from being something I'm willing to do. If I'm in that position, I'll give you an example. We had an AT who was in the Los Angeles Anaheim Angels organization, and he was willing to have a student. But because of the Katie restrictions, we literally had a student on a plane getting ready to go, and we weren't like we were still struggling with the legality. The contract wasn't signed,
Yeah.
and it ultimately went through. But if it hadn't, that student would have been out the cost of the airfare, the disappointment of thinking I'm going to work in pro baseball for spring training, and now I'm not. And all we've done is impose this burden on a clinician who was out of the kindness of their heart offering a learning experience for a student. And that's what's lost in this is I get it. There needs to be protection and the legality side of things, both for the program and for the student and for the clinical site. But man, I think it's closed a lot of doors. We have sites that took students for years that they don't want to mess with it, so they don't take. And when I say we, this is at a previous institution. So what are you going to do? Like we've closed opportunities for students to get exposure to those types of settings.
Yeah. Well, and that's when I worked jujitsu with Dr. Ethan Kreisworth. It was event coverage, so it was the per diem space that we were really doing. But the next best thing for combat experience was probably wrestling. And wrestling still does not get as many touch points as jujitsu. Jujitsu, a weekend is worth as much as a whole clinical rotation at the end of the day for emergency care. You got blood runs, you got quick evaluations, you have to make a return to play decision, concussions, chokeouts, fractures, you get it all in probably a 2 to 3 days, which you probably don't get in many clinical rotations. So I was always a big advocate of let's get the students in here, if they're comfortable enough, you have an athletic trainer with you, a certified, but, you know, it just all the touch points in a 12-hour span was amazing, and I don't think a lot of programs took advantage of that, and it was a great networking opportunity because it was per diem, it was a random shift of athletic trainers every day or every shift, whatever it was broken up to, so, we had people that were working US soccer or national teams. We had professional sports athletic trainers coming through. We had UCLA athletic trainers coming through. What a great way to get in front of someone and do an informal interview, basically, or
Hmm.
elevator speech of what you're trying to do as a student and what other connections they can get you to on what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So we've almost shut down that little community of athletic training, um, of just getting in front of people nonchalantly.
Hmm. Yeah, I think far too often it's easy. Maybe I'm a pessimist by nature, but it's easy for me to see all the things we're doing wrong.
Well,
And you even
yeah.
pointed out like the NATA and they're advocating for AT being considered a professional degree. Well, that's a little misleading. They're not saying that we're not professionals. It's
Yeah.
a classification that speaks to how much money you can borrow to do it.
Yep.
It's not the disrespect that people thought it was.
Mhm.
And in many ways, I feel like it's a protection against the government allowing a student to get so in over their head with student loans to pursue a career that's never going to have the ROI.
Yep.
It's the government stepping in to make a logical decision that perhaps the student's emotions wouldn't allow them to see. Like, am I really going to incur what's the threshold? Is 250K? I don't know. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was something crazy like that.
Yeah. Am I going to borrow that much money so that I can make 45 or 50K a year starting out? Like, that's foolish.
Yeah.
But we all know, and we all did it. Like as a GA, I made 8 grand a year with a certification working on my master's degree because I wanted to be in D1 sports.
Mhm.
So instead of constantly focusing on the negative that bubbles right to the top of my consciousness, I've been trying to be better about, okay, what are some positive ways that I can speak into this? What are some things I could suggest to a young professional that isn't going to just result in them leaving the profession altogether? Because as negative as I may come across about AT sometimes, all the best lessons about my work and my work ethic and my passion for serving other people, those were
Mhm.
forged one patient at a time working as an athletic trainer. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. So, uh, there's plenty of growth to be had, even though there are some negatives to it.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I hope my platforms don't come off as, I don't know, bitching. I was really trying to set apart myself for addressing these issues or things that we don't talk about in a professional manner because I saw people that were addressing it very poorly and too emotionally, where I really try to present the information as objectively as possible. I mean, this last one where I just said this is an advocacy probably came off very rash, but I do think advocacy has been overused in the last few years, especially with the political climate, and I don't think people understand what the meaning of that word is anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
I could be an anarchist, I could be an advocate. Who knows what day you get Shelby Daly on, but, you know, It's just athletic trainers keep forging on and just working, and we all talk about most of these subjects, but are we really getting to the root of what it means to address it? And that's why I just had to bluntly say, "This isn't advocacy anymore." Like, what are you trying to do with this, project of addressing the rise, loan stuff? If you're trying to get more people into the profession, you're just gonna get a lot of more pissed off athletic trainers because at the end of the 2 years, they've taken out how many loans and they're not able to pay it back with the culture of athletic training's compensation. So, as I thought about it, how I don't know if the NATA can do it. They obviously have some scholarships, but how have they not partnered with many of the companies that sponsor NATA and create bigger scholarships, more scholarships, so that we can start marketing to the high schoolers. You don't have to give it to them, obviously, after they graduate high school because they have 4 years, but they have the availability to access those scholarships when they actually commit to a program and get through their first semester or whatever. I know that's a
Yeah.
really long term game that they'd be playing, but you give them a scholarship, and then from the business standpoint, they get a percentage off of their orders once they enter the profession for the 5 years that they're working, their first 5 years, so that they're a loyal customer to the scholarship that you've provided them.
Mm.
And I don't think we're thinking those long games and big games of how do we make it easier and bring in the companies that are supporting sports medicine to create more drive to push people into the universities or the athletic training programs at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's that's genius, honestly. I love that idea. As you're talking, I quickly did the math. In my 3 years at Arizona, I worked alongside 18 certified athletic trainers,
Mhm.
18 different certified athletic trainers. All of them had bachelor's degrees, so no master's degrees. This was
Yep.
pre-master's degree. In 2026, one of them is still in clinical practice with a bachelor's degree. If you advocate for let's allow people to take out an unlimited amount of money to pursue this career,
Mhm.
and they are quickly brought to the reality of what that master's degree avails them to in terms of a salary, how long are they going to stay in the profession? Like these are
Yeah.
people that chose to leave the profession. Yeah, the pay was poor, but it wasn't like they were missing student loan payments. It wasn't like they were not able to pay their rent. In
Yeah.
2026, you have to pay for the degree, housing costs, don't even get me started. So, I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm to create a whole generation of ATs, former ATs.
Mhm.
They're they're either going to let their cert expire and go on to do other things, or maybe they keep it current because of nostalgia. But uh, there's just it's so difficult to justify that initial. And we're not even talking about how hard it is. Like these programs are not just a walk in the park. Like this is a challenging, rigorous credential
Mhm.
with a national certification and a master's degree, and where's the payoff?
Yeah.
How can I mean, it is as a program director, when my daughter was in high school and she's like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna take athletic training for my PE credit." I'm like, "No, you're not." Like, and that check in my spirit was like, "Wow, how can I keep doing this if I wouldn't let my own kids do it?" And that's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
Um, but it was true. Like I felt like I worked with so many bright people who invested years of their lives to pursue this, and they weren't being compensated. They were being worked to death. Their marriages were suffering. They were missing out on things that I saw, you know, coaches with 0 years of experience hiring in at double their salary. That's hard to swallow. Now with NIL, we're seeing 18-year-olds making double and triple the salary.
Yeah.
Um, that's hard to reconcile.
Yeah. Well, and while you were talking, I had thoughts. I think that's the compensation is obviously the biggest thing, and I'm not sure if it's really human resources setting it. I don't know if it's leadership, like an athletic director. I don't know if it's the head athletic trainer. Who is having these conversations to educate how this is supposed to work out? And I don't know why we keep getting dogged in these departments. This is classic athletic training at a college level. That's usually where my examples are coming and rooting from because that's the highest employment, in the past few years. Um, but I don't understand how we're not able to spearhead this problem of educating how the pay scale should work. I shouldn't be getting a 3% raise because that's the federal minimum wage increasing every year. We haven't set KPIs very well, and I don't think we have very good examples of what KPIs we can implement into our practice of performance measures, what you're achieving, what programming you're putting in, did you really decrease the injuries? We're not keeping those data points like you said. When I was in Southern California, I worked for Santa Ana College, and they actually had the stair-step progression of if you have a master's degree, if you have a doctorate degree, you qualify for this amount of pay. How many years experience? I think they had that stair step. So they actually had the equations to do that. And I don't know how a community college, I'm sure because it's a state-ran college, public school, that's how they got away with that. But for private institutions and other places, they still haven't really lobbed onto that. While I was at UCLA, I feel like half the staff is very concrete, not really moving, very good. They're getting watched out for. But then the other half, it's like an open door policy of people just trying to get experience to move on to the next place, which I think is odd since, UCLA is prestigious. It's well known for its athletics. It's always in the national news. People bet a lot of money on those things. So they still didn't really, even with that concrete group, when I was there, their athletic trainer for football was being subsidized by doing research for a concussion platform. They couldn't even
Oh,
figure out how to get his pay increased at that time. And I think that's very odd. And yeah, I'm not sure where to address this pay stuff. It's a common problem and it still has not been fixed, and the proper people have not been educated on it.
yeah. I'm taking a sports psych class this summer. We were just talking about this today, about how if we focus on the negative, it becomes really resilient. And even if I say 30% likelihood that a surgery fails, then
Mhm.
you're going to view that very negatively. Even if I come back after the fact and say, but if you think about it in this way, 70% chance that it's successful, it's still perceived as negative.
Yeah.
Whereas if we come immediately with the positive and say, 70% likelihood that this surgery will address your problem, positive. And
Mhm.
then if we come back and say, well, if you think about it like this, a 30% chance that it won't, well, that's negative. So coming with the negative sticks. I just watched a TED talk on this as well. But what I've noticed, and maybe you can speak to this as well, if I post something that's somewhat negative and provocative, it gets shared, it gets liked, it gets commented on. I came up with kind of I felt guilty. Like all I'm doing is talking negative. Like what can I do to suggest or speak into this in a positive way? And I'm like, well, what if we did like a Glassdoor, like a ranking system? Or what if we spotlighted the programs that are paying really well?
Mhm.
And, regardless of KPIs or anything else, what are the 5 best paying Division One jobs in America? We don't know that. I don't
Yeah.
know that. Nobody's publicizing that, but we know that there are 5 best paying D1
Well, they
places.
keep popping up on the NATA salary survey, but they don't wanna tell you who's actually in that 100 grand range.
Yeah. And so that type of post gets no traction. Coming up with an equity index where quality of life and how likely is a position to turn over in a given, like we could actually develop some pretty elegant metrics to show what jobs are good jobs and what jobs are not so good jobs, but that never gets shared. I think we all just kind of like to wallow in the mud and moan about it, but
Mhm.
the potential solutions to this don't have nearly as much traction. And I'm not saying that's the answer, but it was one. And I was pretty excited. I'm like, I'm going to hammer this out. I think it got like 2 shares, but me bitching about something gets 100 shares.
Yeah. Well, that's me calling out that it wasn't advocacy, like, that went a little viral, and my original reason how I got into this was, what, 2.5 years ago now? I posted about the NATA salary survey, and I said, "How am I making as much as a bachelor's in athletic training when I got my master's to differentiate myself and be more competitive in the job market? Now that it's a standard, is it really worth anything more if I'm making as much as a bachelor's person?" Uh, Obviously, there are still some variables that go into that. They coulda got a master's in something else, I don't know. But, that's where I built my platform, was because I critiqued what the heck the profession was doing. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily the pay, it was that I couldn't be competitive anymore with what I was pursuing.
Yeah. And I don't know where you land with that, but it's like at some point I'm tired of just rattling the bars. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we need awareness to this, but can we solve this? Because this is too cool of a job for me to look a 19-year-old in the eye and be like, don't major in that. Like,
Mhm.
I I don't want to say that. Like, it's
Yeah.
the coolest job I ever had. And it was the most miserable job I ever had. And those two things were true at the same freaking time.
Yeah, well, and I do think it's the business aspects, and I had brought that up with the "This is an advocacy" post, is financially, we are not enabling our students, our new professionals, with adequate information. We're just saying, yeah, take the loan to get this education, but financially, what are the repercussions of taking that loan? And that's where, the idea of these company sponsorships partnering with the NATA came from, was, well, how do you solve that problem? How do you get people away from having to take loans, and how do you get more scholarships out? And that's, I mean, when I was doing my DAT, one of my goals was to try to get a scholarship while I was there. That is the toughest thing, even though one girl in the program got like 10 to 15 scholarships while she was in the program, but I don't think they were necessarily AT specific either. And many
Mhm.
scholarships don't support doctorate level students either. So I know during my program, we had a project for, I think, nonprofit projects, phil philan philanthropy, is that how you
There you
say
go.
it?
You got it.
And that was one of the projects. I still haven't figured out how to fund it for To the Bone, was how to push out more athletic training specific scholarships for students and certifieds to be able to go out and do continuing education, some of these big ticket courses that, a lot of employers don't cover. So it was, how do I give back to the community? Because I know that I was blessed at Caltech with their professional development funding, but I know that there are a lot of people that would like to take possibly like a leadership conference course, or,
Mhm.
some of these other things, manual therapy, that are $1,000 price tags. How can I get people to be excited about going and doing continuing education?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that was very eye-opening while I was at Caltech, was we basically had about $7,000 plus in continuing education. There was different buckets, and I was the only one maxing those out every single year.
Yeah.
Nobody else really looked into those professional development funds because it was too much work or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't have time to do it. And it was like, holy crap, they are giving you $10,000 to go better yourself in some sort of way, and you have not looked into that.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of those things. I'm starting in the fall at the University of Florida. They have an online program in applied physiology and kinesiology. And the thing I love
Mhm.
about it is it's a sports science. Basically, one of the courses that I'm taking is a prep for the CPSS. There's 4 different courses that are kind of leveraging AI for analytics. And people have asked me, they're like, why are you signing up for this? Will be my 4th master's degree. And I'm like, none of this existed when I was working on my first master's degree.
Yeah.
Why are you not? Is kind of the question I want to ask them. And sadly, I mean, this is all out of pocket cash for service. But one class is like $1,500, and that's a big cash outlay. The whole program is 17 grand, something like that. I won't
Yeah.
get it done in a year. I'll just kind of chip away at it. But there's no incentive to do that. I won't get a pay raise for doing it. I feel like if sports science would have existed when I was pursuing athletic training, that's probably the direction I would have headed, but I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
But that said, if this entire industry has sprouted up within the span of my career and I haven't learned about it, I'm ignorant to it. So
Mhm.
um, I would love. I just assumed that there was no grant or scholarship opportunities for an old like me. So I've just kind of resigned myself to paying out of pocket for it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's why I got my business entrepreneurial certificate from University of Alaska Anchorage. It was online. There was funding for it, and I was like, I don't have to take a full course load, but I can chip away at it. And,
Hmm.
they had scholarships because I was still technically an Alaskan resident, but, we don't have to audit that at ever. Um, but, it was trying to get the cost down so I could just maximize the experience and what was available to me, and I don't know if we're taking advantage of some of those things that our employers are providing us. We bitch about the compensation, and that's such a small part of what an employer is actually providing you, and I don't think people understand how expensive it is to provide those benefits for you at the end of the
Yeah.
day, and not that we're being, I don't know, gracious or expressing gratitude, but I don't think we're smart enough at the end of the day to look at what your whole package is actually offering you and what you
Hmm.
can do to decrease costs. I mean, some places pay for your cell phone bill. Are you actually taking advantage of that? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Shelby, I appreciate you reaching out. This is a great conversation. I could
Yeah.
always talk shop with you if maybe we should do this more frequently. Maybe we could come up with more positive things so that we could do a little PR resuscitation for both of our respective platforms.
Yeah. That would probably be good. Um, but yeah, so, well, thanks for jumping on and talking. I'm sure that we can keep going forever, and we'll have to do another one in a month or so and
Yeah.
talk more about
So
things
for
we're
my
talking in the
listeners
background.
that are new to you, point them in the
Yeah.
right direction.
To the Bone Sports Medicine podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And then I'm very vocal on LinkedIn, my personal one, Shelby Daly, Daly. I pose a lot of questions about leadership, business, specific to sports medicine, but I put some general stuff out there too. And then, I have Instagram, I have an X account. I don't know how that all works, but I have one of those too. And I have Facebook. I'm trying to do a better job of putting my blogs out, which are all homed at www.tothebonepodcast.com. And then Toby, back at you if somebody wanted to look more into your stuff.
Yeah, appreciate that. Uh, Becoming Undone is on Spotify, Apple, all the major platforms. The website is undonepodcast.com. My personal stuff is all at tobybrooksphd.com, and all my socials are at Dr. Toby Brooks PhD. That's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Um, those are the primary. I think I have an X and a TikTok, but I don't really feel like those are places for someone of my age.
Exactly. So, well, thank you so much for being on. And I'm thinking we'll post this on both of our platforms
Yeah,
so it gets spread
awesome.
out much further.
Yep.
So,
All right. Well, I'll end it there if I can find the button. And it disappeared. There it is.